Hey, what are you doing?
Yeah, trying to start a private practice.
Oh, that's actually a really complicated process.
It really is.
Yeah, actually, I know 6 steps just to get you started. Do you want to hear about it?
Yeah.
All right, grab some coffee. Let's go.
Okay.
How rude of me. You should grab some coffee too. Welcome to another video. Today we're talking private practice. And if you're anything like me, you've always wanted to start a private practice, but you literally have no idea where to start. And you definitely didn't get any training in business. But today, as a therapist who's opened up a private practice in New York, I want to share with you the 6 steps you can take to open your own private practice. So a few things before we get started. First, I never want to recreate something that someone else has already done really well. So I want to highlight 2 channels that are already producing awesome content all about private practice. The first is Private Practice Skills, and the second is Private Practice Workshop. I've linked their channels up above and down below in the description. They have been really helpful for me, and I definitely think they'll be helpful for you, so go ahead and check them out. Second, I want to let you know that I am giving a very comprehensive 6-step process for starting a private practice, but I can't get into all the nitty-gritty details or the video would just be way too long. So if you have other questions or want to know more about something else, please do go ahead and leave a comment down below. I'll definitely address that. Also, I'll be posting links to everything I talk about in the description down below, so you can go ahead and do your own research. Also, finally, I am not a lawyer and I'm not an accountant, so this video cannot count as legal or financial advice. However, I am a fairly detail-oriented person, and although this can be tedious and has some drawbacks, it's been really helpful in this process, and you can be assured that I've done a lot of painstaking research at each step of the way when creating my private practice. So without any further ado, let's get into the steps to create a private practice. So the first step is going to be to find and acquire malpractice insurance. This definitely has to be done first, as many of the other steps are going to require this to be in place. Now this can be quite a daunting task as there are so many different options. However, a lot of different professional organizations or associations actually recommend malpractice insurance. So for me, as a social worker, there's the National Association of Social Workers, and they actually recommend a particular malpractice insurance. I know there's other associations such as the American Counseling Association and the American Psychological Association. All of these are great resources and a great starting point for finding good malpractice insurance for your particular profession. So the second step is to determine which business entity you want to establish. And I know as a therapist, this may be the most daunting task as it's the most foreign. However, I want to encourage you, with a little help, you can definitely understand and you can definitely do it. Now, an example of a business entity is something like a limited liability company or a sole proprietorship or a corporation. There's many others, but that's just a few. What's important to know is that establishing a business entity allows you to obtain an EIN or an employer identification number from the IRS. And what that allows you to do is open up a separate business bank account. Now, here in the state of New York, I've seen people open up business in one of 2 ways typically. And one way is that people completely bypass the business entity portion. They don't establish that at all. They use their social security number as the EIN, and they begin taking payments straight into their personal bank account. And although this is very quick and there's no process for getting started, it probably is very messy when it comes to tax season, and I'm sure there's other complications as well. The other thing that people do, and this is what I did, is to establish a PLLC. Now, mind you, in New York, you're not allowed to establish an LLC as a licensed professional, and you have to establish a PLLC, which means Professional Limited Liability Company. Very complicated reasons for why that is, and I'll link down below more information about that. However, do not make the mistake and hop on LegalZoom thinking that you can buy an LLC for your private practice in New York. That's what I did, and I found out very quickly that was not the way to do things. However, although this takes much longer to establish the PLLC, there's a lot of companies out there willing to help. Now, I hired a company for myself to help me do the process because it is so daunting and it takes such a long time. For me, it took about 4 to 6 months to get fully established. You can do this yourself, but the process is quite arduous and takes a lot of back and forth. I would highly recommend hiring a company to help you out. The cost of doing so is minimal compared to the help that they can provide. They literally send everything for you and interact with the state and the licensing board on your behalf. It is really, really great. So right after establishing my PLLC, someone told me about one other way in which you can possibly obtain an EIN without going through the arduous process of obtaining the PLLC. And I think this is called something like DBA, or doing business as. Apparently, you can obtain a name for which you're doing business under, and you can do this quite quickly within 24 to 48 hours. And from there, you can obtain an EIN. Now, I don't know all the specifics as I did not go through this process, but if you Google DBA or doing business as, I'm sure you'll find more information. So step 2B, assuming you've established a business entity, is to determine which bank you want to use for your business bank account. This is not a very hard process and it can be opened very quickly. However, there are many, many different options. So definitely go ahead, do your research, and choose the one that works for you. The third step is paperwork and documentation. Although tedious and boring, you definitely want to do a thorough job here. The good news is you can work on this while all the other steps are in process. Now, when I was going through this process, I had a lot of questions, like what paperwork do I have to hand to a client when we establish care together? Or what constitutes a signature? Or where do I write down my cancellation policy? Is it okay to write down a cancellation policy? I had a ton of questions, and I actually found that as I did more research, I had more questions. I really do think that the only way to come up with thorough paperwork and documentation is to consult a healthcare lawyer. I will go ahead and link down below the person that I used, as well as some other helpful resources. I will say that as I was going through this process and I spoke to a lawyer, I found out there was an entire HIPAA manual that I needed that I had no idea about. I only would have found out by talking to him. The other things you can ask lawyers about are what exactly do you need to document as part of your medical record? So as a mental health professional, you'll be keeping a medical record. What do you need to document? What do you not need to document? These are really important questions that only a healthcare lawyer can give you really good answers on. Finally, you have to think through things like HIPAA. So can I email? Can I text? These are things that a lawyer has to help us with. So I definitely want to recommend that when you're establishing your paperwork and documentation, consult a healthcare lawyer. The fourth step is to determine which EMR or electronic medical record you want to use. This is a really important decision, but can also be really overwhelming because of all the different options. Now for me, I chose SimplePractice for a few reasons. One is it's easy to use. Two, it's HIPAA compliant. And three, I can see myself growing into it as my practice grows and develops. These are some of the criteria that I was looking for when choosing a platform. Now, what I would encourage you to do is take advantage of all the free trials that are offered. So many of the softwares offer these. See which works best for you, see which one you can grow into, and make a choice. Don't oscillate too much, don't think too much about it. The other thing you have to think about is how you're going to receive payments. Now, another reason I chose SimplePractice is because they have an integrated payment feature, which is really, really convenient. Now, if you don't go with something that has that, you do have to figure out a secure way of receiving payments. This is something else to think about. The fifth step is to determine whether or not you want to take insurance. If you choose not to, you can skip this step. However, if you do want to, you have to figure out how to get paneled with different insurance companies. Now, there's a few ways you can do this, and the first way, and arguably the most difficult, is to interact with the insurance company yourself. Now, I actually don't know anyone who's done this because it is so difficult and so challenging, so I don't know if I'd recommend this process. The second way you can do it is by working with a credentialing company, and this is something I actually looked into. And what happens is you pay them a certain amount of money, and then they will credential you with different insurance providers. They handle all the paperwork, all the interactions. It's actually quite good. However, one drawback that they told me about is that it is, well, one, it's quite pricey, and two, is that even if you pay them to get you paneled with different providers, it's not a guarantee that you'll even be paneled because they have to bargain and all sorts of things that go on behind the scenes. So that is a serious drawback. The third option, and arguably the best option, and this is something I do and I see a lot of private practitioners doing, is to work with a startup company such as Alma or Headway, who does all the heavy lifting for you. So either you pay a monthly membership fee or it's free, and they do all of the work to get you paneled. and it happens quite quickly, either within 30 days or with some insurance providers, it takes a while, like 6 months. But regardless, you don't do any of the hard work. You simply work with them, they get you paneled, and you are now accepting insurance. This is a wonderful option. I'm gonna link both Alma and Headway down below. I would strongly encourage you to check them out. Awesome, awesome startup companies doing great things. So the sixth and final step, which might be quite obvious, is to determine where you want to practice. So do you want to be in a physical space in an office, or do you want to practice virtually, which after the pandemic is now a very viable option, and that is one that I have chosen. Now, if you do choose to practice virtually, you have to determine all of the laws, rules, and regulations that apply to you, but when you consult a lawyer, this is something you can definitely ask them. So there you have it, the 6 steps for starting a private practice. Hopefully you feel a little bit more confident and able to start a private practice on your own. I would encourage you to do a bit more research and dig just a bit deeper. I've posted links to everything I've talked about down below in the description. If you did find this video helpful, I would definitely appreciate it if you could subscribe below. I'll be posting consistent content to this YouTube channel for both providers and people interested in seeking out therapy. I look forward to seeing you soon.